It's time to break down the Buffalo Bills Week 18 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, folks, you know what we're going to do. We're getting ready for the AFC East Championship Game on Sunday. So let's break it down, get you ready for Bills Dolphins, and of course, all the keys for the Bills to win this game and some dynamics about the Dolphins as we are now in Week 18. And so you know what the deal is. The Bills are on the road Week 18 to face the Miami Dolphins for the AFC East Championship. The game will be played on Sunday, January 7th at 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida. The game will be broadcasted on NBC. Mike Tirico is on the play-by-play, Chris Collinsworth, the game analyst, and Melissa Stark is the sideline reporter. And this should be interesting because I see a lot of, well, not a whole lot of love out there for Chris Collinsworth from both Bills fans and Dolphins fans. So it should be kind of interesting to see how everyone responds to Collinsworth, who doesn't feel like either fan base is much a fan of. This will be the 121st all-time meeting between the Bills and Dolphins. The Bills hold an all-time record of 57-62-1 against Miami, but the Bills have won the last 3, 10 of the last 11, and 12 of the last 14 against the Dolphins. And of course, the most recent matchup was in Week 4, a 48-20 win for the Buffalo Bills. The Bills enter this game 10-6. The Dolphins are 11-5. The Dolphins' 11 wins came against the Chargers, 2 against the Patriots, the Broncos, Giants, Panthers, Raiders, 2 against the Jets, Commanders, and Cowboys. There are 5 losses to the Bills, Eagles, Chiefs, Titans, and Ravens. Head coach of the Miami Dolphins is Mike McDaniel, 40 years old. He's in his second season with the Miami Dolphins and as an NFL head coach. Was 9-8 last year, 11-5 this year, an overall record of 20-13, and he's now led the Dolphins to the playoffs in each of his first 2 seasons as their head coach. The quarterback, Pro Bowler, Tua Tagovailoa, 6 foot, 220 pounds, 25 years old, was a first-round pick, number 5 overall in 2020 by the Miami Dolphins out of Alabama. He started 50 games so far in the NFL, and the Dolphins have a 32-18 record in those starts. In 2023, he's been statistically outstanding, completing just under 70% of his passes, 69.6% of his passes, 278 passing yards per game, 28 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and a passer rating of 103. Now let's break down his splits over the last 4 games. I really like to kind of dive into the most recent meaningful sample size to talk about what these offenses are at this point in time. So that's what we're going to do for Tua here. Focus on the last 4 games where the Dolphins are 2-2. His average time to throw, 2.33 seconds. That is the fastest in the NFL. And so, you know, Tua's a quick triggered quarterback, gets the ball out of his hands extremely quick. And that has been really true over the last 4 games. When he gets it out in under 2.5 seconds, which is 65% of the time, he completes 74% of his passes. That's 8th best in the league with a passer rating of 91.6, which is 15th in the NFL. When he holds it for over 2.5, which is 35% of the time, he only completes 54% of his passes. So a 20% dip in completion percentage when he holds on to the ball for over 2.5 seconds compared to when he gets it out under 2.5 seconds. But that is 12th best in the NFL with passer rating very good of 100.3. That's 22nd, actually, in terms of passer rating when holding the ball over 2.5 seconds. His average depth of target is down right now. It's 7.8. That is 20th. 9.1% of his throws are 20 yards or more down the field. That's 28th. And we'll get into this a little bit. This team has become a little less vertical oriented with their passing game and leaned a lot more into the screen game, a lot more into their quick passes, which I know they're always been into the quick passes, but even more lately as they've had some offensive line injuries. So that's why some of these numbers are a little bit different compared to where you're typically used to seeing them for Tua. But 9.1% of his throws are 20-plus down the field. That's 28th in the NFL. On those throws, he's been good, 6 of 12, 205 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, a passer rating of 123.6, which is 7th best in the NFL. By comparison, Josh Allen has been terrible on throws 20 yards or more down the field of late. His passer rating is second worst in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. Under pressure, Tua's under pressure 31.8% of the time. That's the 8th lowest in the NFL. A lot of that has to do with how quick he gets the ball out of his hands. But when he is pressured, the numbers aren't so hot. 55.4 passer rating under pressure, 22nd in the NFL, and a completion percentage of 39.4, which is 30th in the NFL. So needless to say, pressure on the quarterback is going to be critical this week, especially because when he's kept clean, he dices you up. 106.7 passer rating when kept clean. That's 9th best in the league. 78% completion percentage. That's 2nd best in the NFL. Now, something that's really interesting that I noticed when studying the Dolphins in preparation for this recording is that Tua's only been blitzed 9.9% of his dropbacks over the last 4 weeks, which is by far the lowest in the NFL, by 6%, the least blitz quarterback in terms of frequency. And his season average is around 23%. So across all 16 games at this point, he's blitzed 23% of dropbacks, including the last 4. And when you parse out just the last 4, it's under 10%. It's pretty interesting. And I think that leans into what I was just telling you, that this team has become more screen oriented, quick game oriented, and teams are just not, they don't have the appetite to blitz like maybe they did earlier in the season. Play action is a pretty big part of what they do. 26% of passes are play action. That's 12th in terms of frequency. He has a 118 passer rating with play action, 86.2 without play action over the last 4 weeks. And then screens, the number one screen team in the NFL right now, 15% of throws are screens, which is number one in terms of frequency, averaging 5 yards per attempt, which is 16th in the NFL. So there's been some evolution here. It's not been quite the gaudy production that it was earlier in the season. Of course, when you have the injuries that they've had with the offensive line, really throughout their offense, they've had injuries. Tyreek Hill playing through an ankle injury. Jaylen Waddle not available last week. We'll see what his availability is for this coming game. They've changed a bit, and it's a lot more getting the ball out even quicker and more screens and less of the vertical stuff down the field. Again, who knows what this week is going to have in store, but in terms of the trends, that's kind of where you see it going when it comes to this Dolphins passing offense under Tua Tagovailoa. All right, we're going to break down the Dolphins offense even more here in just a moment, and of course, give you my keys for the Bills defense against this offense, so be sure to stick with me. But folks, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to be certain that you have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. And hiring's easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Look, LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats right now and might not have the time or resources to hire. Well, thankfully with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. And they even just launched a new feature that helps you write job descriptions. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins is Frank Smith, 42 years old. Mike McDaniel, however, is the offensive play caller for Miami. Last year, the Dolphins were 11th in scoring offense, 6th in yards. This year, they're even better. They're number 1 in scoring offense this season, 30 points per game. That's the best in the league. They are averaging 24.5 points per game over their last 4. 7.6 yards per pass. That's second best in the league. 5 yards per rush. That's first. So number 1 in scoring, number 2 in yards per pass, number 1 in yards per rush. They turn it over 13% of drives. That's middle of the pack, 13th. They did have 3 turnovers last week against Baltimore, but only had 1 turnover in the previous 4 games. So they did such a good job of taking care of the football, and then that kind of blew up a bit on them last week. They convert on third down 42% of the time. That's 9th. They score a touchdown on 65% of their red zone trips, which is 3rd best in the NFL. Let's talk about their personnel, and we'll talk about their injuries along the way. Of course, at wide receiver, it's all about Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill's the best skill player in the NFL. He's the one that gives me the most concern of any player in the NFL when it comes to skill players. You guys know the deal here. He's unbelievably explosive, and he's a really good receiver as well. He's not just a fast guy. He's a fast guy that knows how to play receiver, dynamic route runner, really good ball skills, really good hands, really creative. He's got all the football instincts to go at that speed. Now, of course, he's battling that ankle injury that's kind of hampered him of late. Of course, we all saw him in the boot when he was tending to his home this past week as it was on fire, had to leave the facility. Fortunately, everybody's good to go there, it sounds like. But he is playing through that ankle injury, and he's still been pretty productive. I'm not sure he's been quite early season Tyreek, and that's hard to do when you're not healthy. But he's still been productive. And it's going to be interesting because the Bills, and I didn't realize this until recently, the Bills have had a lot of success defending Tyreek Hill in 6 regular season games, 3 with Kansas City, 3 with Miami. He's never had more than 69 receiving yards, and he has 1 touchdown in 6 games. And look, past games, they're interesting, but it doesn't matter. There's no transitive property in football. But it is interesting that the Bills have had a fair amount of opportunity to play Tyreek Hill and have done a really good job of bottling him up for the most part. Jaylen Waddle, another 1,000-yard receiver for them, dynamic, explosive. He's got a high ankle sprain. He missed last week against Baltimore, and he got injured, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the Dallas game before that, and it's a high ankle sprain. Usually that's a multi-week injury. We'll see if he can play on Sunday. If he does, I'd anticipate he's pretty limited with his movement, but, everything's at stake here. You don't know who's going to try to really push it in play, although I think there's a reasonable chance he won't be able to go. Now, with him out, most of that opportunity has gone to Cedric Wilson. Veteran, came over from Dallas a few years ago, has not really been super productive for them, but he's been around. He's been part of the team the last couple of years, and they've certainly thrown the ball to him more as they've had to play games recently without Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. He's more of a possession-style receiver that doesn't have the vertical explosiveness, but kind of a crafty, get leverage, catch the ball type situation where he's had some flashy moments in his career. Braxton Berrios, also part of the mix at receiver, kind of a traditional slot guy that's a very good returner. They have Chase Claypool, a big monster receiver. They've tried to get him some opportunities. It hasn't really come through, but he's a guy that you have to account for. And then, of course, Robbie Chosen. We'll see if he goes. And then River Craycraft, who's kind of a discount Braxton Berrios that gives them a lot as a blocker. So, of course, I went through a lot of names there because there's uncertainty with Waddle. I think Hill's going to go, obviously, but, they're going to lean onto some of these other players, and they're all vets, right? They got a lot of veteran receivers in the mix here, and so a lot of different guys could get opportunity this week. At tight end, it's all about Durham Smythe. That's been their tight end for a while now, a very baseline skill set. He's not overly dynamic in any capacity, but he's kind of a can-do-it-all at a reasonable level, and he'll be their featured tight end. At running back, Raheem Mostert, I think he has like over 20 rushing touchdowns this year, a Pro Bowler. He didn't play last week, and he hasn't practiced yet this week. I'm recording this on Thursday, and as of Wednesday and Thursday, he didn't practice. So we'll see if he's able to go. If not, it'll be Devon Achane and Jeff Wilson. Devon Achane, the bright young rookie that they have out of Texas A&M that's got world-class speed, has been unbelievably productive when he's been on the field. He's missed some time due to injuries, but he's healthy right now, and he's a very, very explosive back that they're throwing the ball to a little bit as well. And then Jeff Wilson's the other running back who's more of a downhill physical between the tackles, ball carrier, not the speed dynamics that you get from Mostert and Achane, but a cerebral between the tackles runner in the National Football League. When it comes to target distribution over the last 4 weeks, Tyreek Hill, 31 targets to lead the team, and that's including missing a game. Jaylen Waddle, 21 targets, and that includes missing a game over the last 4. Then it's Achane with 20, Cedric Wilson with 16, Durham Smythe with 15. The offensive line is interesting. They're going to potentially get a little bit healthier here. Their left tackle, Terron Armstead, he's healthy enough to play. I think that's kind of the deal with Terron Armstead. I don't think he's ever healthy. He's either healthy enough to play or he's too injured to not play. He's been healthy of late, and I think he's actually been playing pretty well. At left guard, this should be interesting because I think they're going to get Robert Hunt back at right guard this week. And so I would feel like Robert Jones is their best option there. Could be Lester Cotton as well, who's been playing left guard. Their traditional starter here is Isaiah Wynn, but he's been injured for a while. So it's just a matter of which one of these guys between Cotton and Jones winds up being the right guard. If I had to bet, it'd be Robert Jones. Their center is Liam Eichenberg, who's replacing the injured Connor Williams, who's an outstanding center who's out for the year with an ACL injury. Liam Eichenberg's taking over at center. He got his first opportunity to play center, if I'm not mistaken, back in week 4 against the Bills. He's been kind of up and down. He's playing through a calf injury right now. The right guard is Robert Hunt, who's missed the last several games. And I think there's a lot of momentum for him to be back. If he can't go, then your left guard's going to be Lester Cotton. Your right guard's going to be Robert Jones. But I think in all likelihood, it's going to be Robert Hunt in his first game action in a while. And then the right tackle is Austin Jackson, who's had a breakout season. They already signed him to a contract extension, and he'll be their right tackle. So if Robert Hunt's back, that's going to give them at least one of their starters on the interior that they prefer to have. If not, then they'll be all backups in the middle of the offensive line. So what are my keys for the Bills on defense against this Dolphins offense that scores all the points and gets all the yards? Well, number one is defensive line disruption. And that's really going to be first and foremost. Can the Bills up front win? Can they take advantage of some of those matchup opportunities against reserve players on the interior? Can they get pressure on Tua? We went through the numbers, right? He's just not the same. And most quarterbacks aren't very good under pressure. Tua's below 40% completion percentage under pressure the last 4 weeks. You got to get pressure on this guy. And so you got to lean into, of course, what you've been enjoying from Ed Oliver. Welcome back, Daquan Jones. Poona Ford, quick pressure. He needs to be in there. Tim Settle's had some good rush moments lately. And then, of course, on the edges, Epinesa, Rousseau, Floyd, get those hands up. This is going to be a situation where Tua's going to get the ball out quick. It's going to be frustrating as a pass rusher. You're going to hit moves, and it's not going to matter because he gets the ball out before you can get there. But what you can do is get your hands up and affect throwing windows, right? They're going to run screen. They're going to run quick stuff over the middle. Get your hands up and take away some of those windows. Get the ball up in the air. We've seen that work out, right? Whether it's been deflected passes for interceptions, near interceptions, of course, against the Chargers, that Oliver tips it. Jordan Phillips nearly intercepts it, but he drops it. You're going to have those opportunities. Get your hands up. So disrupt. However you need to disrupt. Penetrate against the run and get that pressure on the quarterback. And if you can't get pressure, get your hands up and disrupt those throwing windows. So D-line disruption. Number 2 is this is a critical game for tackling. As I mentioned, very, very high percentage of screens, and they're going to run the ball, and they're going to run the ball outside, right? They're between the tackles. Run game is not there right now. They're going to run outside zone. They're going to run crack toss. And so whether it's taking good angles to the perimeter and finishing and staying under control, that's going to be critical. Yards after catch, yards after contact, you want to concede as little as possible. And so this is a big game for the Bills' second level to take good angles and make tackles. The corners are going to have to tackle. The safeties are going to have to tackle. The linebackers are going to have to tackle. And so don't give this team anything extra. Tackle, tackle, tackle. Absolutely critical. And I know that that's not a revolutionary talking point when you're breaking down defense. But in this game, the style of offense that Miami's going to give you, tackling is going to be critical. And then number 3 is keep playing and stay resilient. You guys hear me say this from time to time when you go up against these top-tier offenses. You have to understand you're not going to take everything away. They're going to make plays. Tua's going to hit Tyreek Hill over the middle of the field, and he's going to run for 15, 20 yards. These things are going to happen. Devon Achane is going to break off a long run. But just keep playing. You're not going to shut them down. Keep playing, stay resilient, and bow up when you need to. Bow up on third downs. Bow up in the red zone. And, of course, you want to try to get negative plays and all that type of stuff, but just understand you're going to give up some stuff here. This is a really creative scheme that has a lot of speed. They do a great job with leverage and motion. They're tough to deal with. They're going to make plays. Stay resilient, keep playing, and make them earn every yard that they get on the football field. So my 3 keys: defensive line disruption, tackling, and stay resilient on defense. Understand that they're going to make plays, but keep playing. All right, we're going to shift our focus to the Dolphins defense against the Bills offense here, so be sure to stick with me. But this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It's not just for those who have experienced major trauma. So if you've been thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. That'll get you matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So celebrate the progress you've already made. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. All right, let's talk about this Dolphins defense against the Bills offense. The defensive coordinator is Vic Fangio, 65 years old. It's his first year with the Dolphins, but he does have a ton of NFL experience, 21 years as an NFL defensive coordinator, 3 seasons as a head coach with Denver. He's got an incredible resume, and I think he deserves to be regarded as one of the best defensive minds in this era of football. I think he's a very defining defensive coach when it comes to modern NFL football. Let's talk about the metrics. They're allowing 23 points per game this season, which is 21st in the NFL, 308 yards per game, which is 9th, 5.9 yards per pass, which is 10th, 3.8 yards per rush, which is 8th. They turn it over 13% of drives, which is 12th in the NFL, and they're actually on a heater right now. They've had at least one takeaway in 10 straight games. So hopefully they're due to not get a takeaway, right? That would be nice. They give up third down conversions 37% of the time, which is 11th best in the league. Their red zone defense has been terrible. 67% of red zone trips end in a touchdown. That's 30th in the league. They blitz not very often, 21% blitz rate. That's 28th in the NFL, but they do get a lot of pressure, 27.6% pressure rate, second best in the league, and a 9.1% sack rate, which is third in the league. Now, keep in mind, they've had some big injuries here at their edge position. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, neither available. ACL tear for Bradley Chubb in last week's game against the Baltimore Ravens. And so there's a lot of sack production missing with those two guys out of the lineup. So let's talk about the personnel that they do have. Again, at the edge, no Chubb, no Phillips, but they have some decent depth. Andrew Van Ginkel, who's had to play for a while now with Jalen Phillips, having been injured since the Black Friday game. He's a stud. Andrew Van Ginkel is going to get a big old contract this offseason. I've kind of been a fan of him for a while. Plays really hard, but the versatility that he has as a rush player, he can work as a spy, he can defend a run, he can play off ball. Really, really versatile player that just makes a ton of plays. You will feel him. He's a player that every time that I watch Miami Dolphins, this guy's making plays, and you can feel his presence. They're going to have to lean on Emmanuel Ogbah, who they're paying a ton of money to, but he's been a healthy and active for a lot of the season. I'm sure he'll come in and do the Bradley Chubb stuff, and I'm sure he's anxious to put some good film out there and parlay that into a decent contract. And then in terms of depth, Cameron Good and Melvin Ingram will be the backups to Van Ginkel and Ogbah. On the interior defensive line, they got a great pair. Christian Wilkins, Zach Sieler. Those two guys are really, really good. They defend the run. They rush the passer. They're athletic. They play with a lot of urgency. It's a really good interior pair. It's going to be a big task for the Bills, who I thought that was a big problem against New England was Barmore, Dietrich Weiss, Keon White. Thought they were able to be too disruptive. Well, Wilkins and Sieler are a better pair than what New England has to offer. So the Bills are going to need to shore up some things there on the interior offensive line this week. Raekwon Davis is kind of their big-bodied nose tackle. Deshaun Hand is a depth player. At linebacker, things could get interesting here. Jerome Baker, who's been their starting middle linebacker for a number of years, who's been on injured reserve, they've opened his practice window. I'm not sure if he's going to play on Sunday night, but he might, and it'd be his first game action in a while. We do know that David Long will be one of the backers. Duke Riley, if Jerome Baker's unable to go, he'll be the other backer, and he's had some good moments, and they've played him at times this season as the third linebacker. And so he's not like a complete slug. He hasn't played. He's a veteran in the NFL. But they could get Baker back this week to go with David Long, and that's a pretty good pair of linebackers. At corner, Jalen Ramsey, we know all about him. It is interesting. I'm curious to see what type of appetite Josh Allen has for Jalen Ramsey. Because Jalen Ramsey's been really good this year. He's been a Pro Bowler despite missing 7 games, 3 interceptions, I think, in 9 games. And in the 2 games that Josh played against Jalen Ramsey when he was with the Rams, Josh threw 4 touchdown passes that were charged to Jalen Ramsey. He's been pretty willing to go at him. This is not Josh Allen playing his best football right now, right? And so I wonder what type of appetite Josh is going to have to go after Jalen Ramsey. His typical running mate is Xavien Howard. Xavien Howard has a foot injury, was carted off last week. I don't think he's going to play. In relief of him, you would think Eli Apple is going to get that opportunity. He had to play last week against Baltimore, and he was an absolute disaster. And now, obviously, different circumstances. He got hurt, or when I say Howard got hurt in the last game that put Apple in when they weren't really expecting to have to play Apple. And now Apple will play this game as a starter that's had a week of practice to get ready to play the game. And then Kader Kohou is their slot receiver, and he's a good slot receiver. He's a bad outside player against Stefon Diggs, right? That was a big part of week 4, was they had Kohou playing on Diggs, and that wasn't a good matchup. Well, they'll have Kohou on the inside, and that's a better spot for him. He's a good player on the inside. At safety, their starting pair is Jevon Holland and Deshaun Elliott. Jevon Holland had MCL sprains in both knees that cost him several games in a row. He played against Baltimore last week, so he's back. And then Deshaun Elliott is his running mate, who's a very solid player. He made that tackle against Tony Pollard. If you guys watched the Cowboys game, that first series, that crazy tackle on the goal line, he made it. So Deshaun Elliott's a very sound player. If they go 3 safety stuff, you'll see Brandon Jones. So what are my keys for the Bills on offense against this Dolphins defense? First thing I have written down is interior offensive line. My biggest level of concern right now is Wilkins and Sealer against this Bills interior O-line, which has been mostly good this year. And it was good in week 4 against the same players. But it's hard for me to get out of my mind the losses that those guys took against the Patriots that took some big explosive opportunities in the passing game away. And so you got to secure that up. You got to shore up that interior and be ready to play some big boy football against some really good players in Wilkins and Sealer. Number 2 is take profits. Josh Allen has to take profits in this game. Vic Fangio likes to flood the coverage lanes. He doesn't like to blitz. He doesn't like to have extra players in the box. They're going to play a lot of coverage. And this is not the game for Josh Allen to chase big plays down the field. This is the game for him to get the ball out of his hands and take profits. The Miami Dolphins are not a good tackling defense. They've missed 117 tackles this year. That's 20 more than the Bills. And I know that there's a lot of thought out there that the Bills are not a good tackling defense. So whatever you think the Bills defense is in terms of tackling, the Dolphins are considerably worse. They have the 4th most missed tackles in the NFL. And so you really got to get the ball into the hands of playmakers. And I'm not asking for more of these perimeter screens. I'm asking for quick game. Get the ball out, get James Cook going, throw the ball to Ty Johnson and James Cook in the flats, and dare them to make tackles, something that they have not done well this season. And again, they're going to play some coverages that are going to maintain a lot of vertical leverage and make it difficult to slot throws down the field. And Josh Allen has not been good throwing the ball down the field this year, and especially of late. You have to understand the season and the circumstances, and Josh Allen needs to take profits in this game. Quick game, get the ball out of his hands. That's what needs to happen. Number 3 is win in the red zone. You have the number 2 red zone offense in the NFL against the number 30 red zone defense. When you get down there, score touchdowns every time. You got to do it. This is not the game where you get down to the 10-yard line and you settle for a field goal. You got to score touchdowns. And this has not been a good red zone defense. Don't let them be a good red zone defense in Week 18. So my keys: interior offensive line, take profits in the passing game, and then win in the red zone. Special teams real quick. Jake Sanders is their kicker. He's been hot lately. 24 of 28 on the season. He's hit 12 of his last 13 in his last 4 games, and had a monster game against Dallas, including like a 57-yard field goal that was absolutely critical in the game. And he's been their kicker for a while. He's playing well. Their punter is Jake Bailey. He's not been good this year. 23rd in the NFL in EPA per punt. He's been high variance. I think he's been better of late. But overall this season, I think he's been an inconsistent punter. The returner is excellent. Braxton Berrios. Not that he's a guy that's going to a threat to have explosive returns, but he's very consistent. He mostly makes really good decisions with the football. He's secure with the football, and he's going to get yards, right? He's not going to do goofy stuff. He's just a really solid kick and punt returner. One other note here on the Dolphins: they're very bad at covering kickoffs. They've allowed over 30 yards per return this season. And not that the Bills have been dynamic returning the ball, but if you wanted to try some kick returns this week, they've been a little bit shaky when it comes to covering those kicks. So there you have it. That's the deal. That's the Miami Dolphins. That's kind of where they're trending. A lot of injuries. And everything's on the line. You know what's at stake. So hopefully this helps you get ready for the AFC East Championship game. We also have one more conversation coming your way this week. I'll share my final thoughts. We'll do injury updates with banged up Bills, and of course my 5 predictions for Sunday night still to come this week. So don't miss it. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you one more time before kickoff.